anyone and everyone who exists is a creative. We just are. That is what we innately are able and capable of doing.
Hey guys, welcome to Soul Vitamins. Hi Soul Bites, welcome to this episode of Soul Vitamins. I'm your host Sonali, and today's guest is Vondell Burns. Vondell is the CEO and founder of Thankless Production, which is her production company she launched that has everything from professional services to educational opportunities catered towards creative entrepreneurs. And she also launched this year her course, Paid to Produce, which helps entrepreneurs break out of imposter syndrome, get out of their own way, and start their own creative projects. Thank you, Vondell, so much for being here with us today.
Thanks for having
me. How does it feel to be on this side and not in your home backstage?
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm used to being the business behind the arts, but it's important, I think, to be able to navigate both spaces. And so I'm honored to take the stage with you.
Totally agree. Love to have you here. And you are a super special guest, not only from all of your work on Soul Vitamins, but because you're an OG Soul Vite. It's crazy to think we've been calling each other Soul Vites for so many years now, and to see that term kind of turn into this show that we're producing together, which is super exciting.
Yes, I'm super thrilled to be a part of the journey, being called a Soul Vitamin for years, leading to creating something with the name has been super fun. So I'm just excited to be brought along.
Love it. Well, why I wanted to bring you on and why you inspire me so much is really your work around imposter syndrome, which I'm excited to get into. As you know, my background is so finance related. So I majored in finance. I've done 5 years in investment banking. And so pivoting to kind of film, media, and this talk show kind of role, it's obviously a scary step for me. So through your course and all of your work through Soul Vitamins, it's really helped me break out of this imposter syndrome and realize that kind of the biggest step is just starting, and you actually have a lot more experience than you think. So for Soul Vitamins, for example, I'm talking to people and I'm surrounded by creatives and entrepreneurs, which is something that's just in my day-to-day life. Like, you talk to people all day and I love it. So I actually was in a better position than I thought, and just kind of putting in the work, your course and everything, it's really helped me kind of blossom into a Soul Bites talk show host. So excited to have you again, and cheers to you, darling. The cup is next level. And your drink matches the background. Thank you for doing that. Okay, so I want to go back to imposter syndrome, which is what kind of your course is centered around. What does that mean to you, and why did you choose to focus on that?
Yeah, so just to back into the course a little bit, the course itself is just about packaging your expertise, getting out of your own way, and launching a creative project. And I market it towards people who may be struggling with imposter syndrome, simply because that's something I struggled with. Imposter syndrome is a curable disease that it affects people who have a subject matter expertise in an area, but don't kind of take onus or ownership of that, or have a hard time kind of navigating how to own that. And I think similar to you, because I started my career on Wall Street as well, I wore a mask a lot of times in creative spaces, or didn't really claim the title of producer, although I was doing that since high school, right? I had the skill set, I developed it, I honed it over several years, but I wasn't owning that title. And I also wasn't advocating for myself or the work that I was doing in a way that pretty much positioned me as a subject matter expert in the space. So once I figured out that what I had been doing and the services that I had been lending to creative entrepreneurs was in fact a legitimate paid role, and these were things that, in lieu of having this person, projects wouldn't move, people and connections wouldn't be made. And so I really started to sit down with basically the charge to get out of my own way in that regard and advocate for myself a little bit more. And I think positioning myself as a producer finally, after having years of experience doing it, really allowed me to make some very valuable connections, move in spaces and places I never would have been able to otherwise without having claimed that title. And so I weave that into my course because a lot of times people don't identify as creatives or creators. And first myth is that you aren't a creative. Anyone and everyone who exists is a creative. We just are. That is what we innately are able and capable of doing as people. And so it's first unlocking what your purest source of creation is. And for some people, it's just their expertise and their expertise giving them the ability to create something. And for others, it's like the traditional, I'm an artist, I'm a musician, I'm a filmmaker, you know, you can label it and kind of know and operate. Both of those realms have space in the land of like paid to produce. I've worked with people who, you know, one of my last clients is a therapist who traditionally would never think of themselves as a creator or a creative. But when I am able to sit down with a therapist and say, how can we package your expertise in a way that would help others via maybe a document or an asset or a video series or whatever, that the bells start whistling, right? And the wheels start churning around how you then can create a structure around your expertise. And so I basically teach people how to do that with any topic or anything that they're interested in.
That's such a good point. I never thought about the fact that we are all creatives. And I feel like a lot of people stray away from that term for whatever reason, but once they do identify with it, it's super powerful and they can tap into like a whole different skill set that they probably didn't know they had. So thanks to the course.
Shout out to the squad, my beta cohort.
The first pupil, oh my God, honored to be a part of it. And here I am, the success story.
It's been incredible to be able to watch the journey, right? And see kind of you day to day implementing some of the things that you've been learning. So that's always a treat too.
So before launching Thankless Production and your paid to produce courses, you were at Goldman Sachs for 5 years in New York on their brand and strategy team. How was that transition this past year, kind of going from your traditional corporate structure to being on your own, totally an entrepreneur? How was that for you?
The transition was an exciting one. I mean, given the timing, it came with its challenges, but this is something that I've been preparing for. I had the support of the firm luckily, you know, I was in a seat where I could be transparent about my outside interests. I actually advocated for that in my role, was able to launch series that focused on that, right? Out of Office was one in which we were able to profile people from the perspective of what they did outside of work. So it was just like the transition in itself. I was very fortunate to be at a company that like nurtured the other side of their employees. And so it didn't come as much of a surprise, I feel, to people who knew me, just because they were like invited to my shows when I was doing them, like that. I think everyone knew that I had that interest, but the impetus of the move was rooted in me really thinking of my life in like 4-year increments, given how we're socialized. And in 2019, that was like my junior year of life, right? And so senior year would have been 2020, in which we are then conditioned to start thinking about what we're gonna do after we graduate, what's the next move, where we're gonna go. So I was like, okay, this is the year I graduate and I need to potentially take a gap year. I was like, I think this would be a good year to travel, start a business, do all these things, insert pandemic. And so I had the conversations with my team, I think it was around March, and that was right when everything started happening. And so it then became a question of, are you sure all this stuff is going on? Is this the right move? And the root of my decision was that I felt like in essence, the world shutting down was a great time to take a gap year. There was no urgency around really anything, and people were very like trying to figure out what was going on. And so I took that as an opportunity to get my ducks in a row around the business. I took a few months just to myself, a sabbatical of sorts, hopped in a car and traveled a little bit in Cali with you, and got to see, I think, what it would look like if I really focused my energy on this full time. And I started researching what it would take to develop an LLC and incorporate myself as an entity. That took about a month to do. And by early 2020, I was incorporated. I had kind of all the business things in line, and I could start officially marketing my services. The first thing I did was went to LinkedIn and just kind of posted that I was doing this. Getting a rousing support through just being honest and transparent with my journey was a huge lift. But I think if anybody's navigating the transition and trying to figure out if it's the right move or not, one of the first things that I had to think about was the financial aspect. And I'll say this, like, this isn't something that I just like woke up one day and decided to do. This is something that like I'd been saving for, and I was really thoughtful about, and I talked to a lot of mentors about, and I got real advice and guidance before actually making the move. And from a financial perspective, I thought, okay, if over the course of your career, you were able to save enough that you felt comfortable leaving your place of employment for a year, that means that if you go back to corporate, you'd likely be going back at a clip, like financially, more than what you started in, right? I had started as an analyst in an entry-level role and just was aggressively saving. And so thinking about taking that same approach, if I re-entered the workforce, I'd likely have just as much as I'd saved the first go around. I'd likely have that in a matter of a few months, right? Like after kind of doing it. The financial situation didn't scare me as much just because I'm not as tied to the notion of like not being able to make back the money that I would potentially like be investing over this course. So I set out to take that year to really just bet on myself, travel, try out entrepreneurship, develop a few products and services that I could package and see what happens. And so that's what I've been doing, and it's been incredible.
That is such an awesome journey, and I can't believe that COVID hit right as you were making the jump, but it ended up working out for the best. And I think like now in this past year, so many people are doing the same things with remote life, myself included, where you're no longer having that going into the office structure, and corporate America is kind of making this huge shift. So a lot of people want to take that leap, and it's helpful to hear stories like that so people know that, you know, you can actually make the step and make the transition smooth if you prep, if you have the finances in order. It's so doable. And it's also important to know that like those jobs are not going anywhere. So if you do your own thing for a period of time, you can always go back, but you'll regret not taking the leap. I wanted to talk about your work with the CCNYC and how that was for you and how it kind of filtered into your work with Thankless Pro, if anything.
Yes, of course. The Creative Collective NYC is a powerful group of creatives that is, I guess, it was started by Imani Ellis, who was the founder. And she had the vision of like creating brave spaces for people of culture to show up, encourage each other, motivate each other. It was something that I stumbled upon through just going to one of their events, CultureCon. It was a very random event for me to have gone to just because it was the same weekend as Howard's homecoming. And I happened to not go that year. And I was just like, what can I do to make sure I don't have FOMO? And luckily CultureCon was going on right up the street for me. And I went to this event and it was literally the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Now, mind you, I grew up in a space of like having to know how to curate like conferences, how to show up in them through my work at GS. And so going to this event, seeing that it was one of the best I'd ever been to, and then finding out that not only did Black people create it, it was founded by a Black woman, and she was only a few years older than me. I was like, oh, this, talk about a soul vitamin. I was like, this is nourishing. So yeah, I mean, at that event, I didn't really make any moves to like be involved. I was just kind of soaking it all in and really enjoying the resource that her and her team were able to provide through CultureCon. And a few months later, a friend actually passed along an opportunity to intern with them. And so because I had gone to that event, it just sparked like, oh, if there's an opportunity to like work with these people and learn from these people, for sure, hands down. So I interviewed, got the internship to come on and help with CultureCon 2020 via their brand partnerships team. Because I was really excited about the notion of figuring out like, there were partners like HBO, Target, just like big names. I was like, what the heck is going on? How are they able to do this? So it was really cool to be able to really see behind the scenes and start developing those relationships. But then, of course, the pandemic happens. So the team had to pivot on what was going to be happening to take up that space. The community wanted things, but Imani was really thoughtful in asking the community specifically, like, what do you want during this time? And the community responded like, we want digital, a digital resource that would kind of help us through certain topics. And that's how the creative curriculum formed. And so I was brought on to help with the program management of that, the first round. And then the second round, because of the work I did in the first round, I was brought back on to become the production manager of the whole event. So I ended up curating conversations with the likes of like Lena Waithe and Big Sean, Kerry Washington and Gabrielle Union. Just like, I couldn't believe some of the names that were coming up, but it was an incredible opportunity to lean into a skill set that I knew I had, but I just had a lot of imposter syndrome around, right? And to hear Imani say things on the call like, oh, Vondell is like the subject matter expert in production, or we have this person who is kind of leading the charge here. It's true. I don't know why I was cringing at these things. Like, this is what I was doing. I am a subject matter expert in this area, but like hearing it and kind of embracing it and allowing that to be the identity that I had was just really, really powerful for me in my journey. So that really fueled what I ultimately ended up doing via Thankless Pro. And obviously we're here, right? So these are some of the things that I was able to like be a champion of via the CCNYC. And now I'm able to propel it forward for all of my other clients and kind of take that subject matter expertise and package it for future broadcasts and live events. So it's been incredible. They've been champions of just leaning in, creating brave spaces, and really empowering people to really go for what they want.
I can't believe you got that experience. Also at such a like early stage too of your whole production career, like while you were still at Goldman, and with these heavy hitters, like I would not be okay if I was talking to Kerry Washington.
That's fair. I mean, going to Howard, we kind of are desensitized from that. Like, celebrities just pop up all the time. And I was in an organization that was like responsible for taking some of those higher profile people across campus or showing them around. So I've already brushed off the bug of like feeling any sort of way around celebrities.
Oh yeah, me too.
So yeah, I think that's just either you have it or you don't, but like can definitely be in a space and kind of make sure that they understand that they're important and I love them, but we still got to film this and it's got to be done in about 30 minutes. So
right.
Smile, like.
I don't care who you are right now.
Yeah.
Best question ever. What is your soul vitamin? So what lights you up? What fuels you? What makes you feel on fire?
I love this question. My soul vitamin would have to be my faith. Anytime I need a little boost of encouragement or just a reminder of who I am and who I'm called to be, I can turn to my faith. I can turn to my Bible. I can turn to my church and understand that I have a community of people that see what I'm building towards. And I also turn to my journal a lot too, because I have to write down my visions. I have to make sure that I'm kind of developing a plan around them and kind of speaking life into myself as I get those visions. So my journal ends up being a big soul vitamin for me because it's a gentle reminder from past me on who I am. And, operating out of your higher self, which I weave into the course as well, I think is a huge source for my soul.
Love that. And honestly, you've gotten me so much more into journaling. So thank you for that. Thank you so much, Vondell, for being with us today. I loved talking to you. Always a pleasure. We'll be in touch because we literally talk always about soul bites. But so see you in like an hour.
See you then.
Before we end, do you want to tell the soul bites how they can keep in touch with you across social?
Yeah, of course. So my business page is at Thankless Pro, and that's where I'd love for you to tap in with me. I always am dropping resources for creative entrepreneurs, and that's where I'll be also letting you all know how to get in touch with me via the Pay to Produce course. So hopefully you'll be able to tap in there. And then my website is thanklessproduction.com. So you can browse that and stay in the loop there as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. And thank you to the Soul Bites who tuned into this episode of Soul Vitamins, the talk show that features creatives and entrepreneur stories aiming to spread a little inspo to others. Thank you.